Today, I want to talk a little bit about rifles, being a rifleman versus being a rifle shooter. And I think they are different. The practical aspects of rifle craft. That's what I want to talk about today. Hopefully that interests you. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting, tactics, ballistics, the right way, with God Almighty at the center. Biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. I'm blessed to serve you as host, military, law enforcement, private security, contracting, competition shooting, hunting, and some other stuff, background. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. First, let us talk about accuracy. There are two big parts of accuracy. There is mechanical accuracy, the accuracy of the weapons platform itself, devoid of any real human interaction. And there is practical accuracy. And I'm going to define this as one's ability to wield that weapon system and get hits on target. Now, as you might reckon, practical accuracy is by far the most important of those criteria for anything practical. That's why practical accuracy, hence the term. Now, we do owe, I think, a debt in the rifle shooting community to bench rest shooters. Bench rest shooting is pretty much trying to see how accurate the rifle is on a bench. A very heavy rifle, big heavy barrels, and shooting off a bench with bags, and pretty much trying to weed out the human element as much as possible with the human shooting it and shoot little teeny tiny groups. We owe a lot of the accuracy we have today, I think, to bench rest shooting. And that's great, and it's a cool thing to do, and it's a cool hobby. That said, I think we have gotten a little bit to the ridiculous end of focusing on mechanical accuracy for a rifleman. It seems like so much of the industry is how can we make either a cheap plastic push-feed bolt-action rifle that shoots a tiny group, as if that's the main criteria, or how much can we spend on a Gucci bolt-action rifle that's several grand with a bunch of bells and whistles that shoots a teeny tiny group. And yeah, of course we all want to shoot an accurate rifle. But here's the thing. When you were talking about, World War II, even like sniper rifle standards, a 2-inch would have been amazing. Like a 4-inch was like the standard for a service rifle. When you're talking about going from a 4-inch group to a 2-inch group, yeah, that difference is substantial. When you're talking about going from today an abysmal 1.5 MOA gun, 1.5 at 100 yards, to a 1-inch gun or a sub 1-inch gun, that difference really doesn't amount to a whole lot if you look at it practical accuracy-wise. A 1-inch, a 1 MOA gun, I know an MOA is not exactly 1 inch at 100 yards, but let's not split hairs here. A 1-inch gun, a 1 MOA gun, is 6 inches at 600 yards. 600 yards. 6 football fields away. An 1.5 gun is 9 inches. We're really getting to the point where it doesn't make much difference. Even if you talk about a 1/4 MOA gun to a 1/2 MOA gun, you're talking 3 inches at 600 yards versus 6 inches. The differences are mostly in your head at that point for, again, practical accuracy. It's cool to be able to shoot a little teeny tiny group. And also, going back to those several $1,000 setups, A lot of that is so people feel good because they can ring steel at long distances. I'm talking distances out past 500 yards, 600 yards, 800 yards. And because it's become so attainable for the common man, I think people think that that's somehow important. But I'm going to beg to differ. I'm going to pee all over the tactical trends of today. As somebody that dove into that world when that was much more expensive and becoming a thing, it's just, I don't see it as practical. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm not saying you shouldn't have fun with it. I'm not saying that it's not really cool and satisfying to clang steel at 1,000 yards. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it's not really practical. Just like if you want to play golf, man, have fun. You spend that time, you spend that money, you go to a really long, big area where you can, hit balls at long distances. Like, that's cool. And if it takes a lot of, time and practice and probably gear, I'm not a golfer, to be able to golf well. And that's fantastic if you want to do it. It's a cool hobby. It's not at all practical. It's not. If you're talking about it from like a survival perspective, if you really enjoy it, you could look at it from a mental health perspective and justify it that way. But it's not at all practical. Nobody is ever going to put a gun to your head and be like, you better hit a hole in one or I'm going to blow your brains out. This is not going to happen. There's a lot of things that men do that are like that, right? There's what those, like, I consider like a hat trick, like the guys that can spin a quarter on their fingers, or the guys that can do the card trick and like pull the card you were thinking of out of the deck or some stupid thing. Like, yeah, that's entertaining and you might enjoy it, and that's all fine, but it's not practical for anything. In the same way that long range shooting is not really practical for the average American, the average person. Even up to and including like private security contracting, law enforcement. I've done those things in real life. I've been a designated marksman. I've designated marksman to be my designated marksman on missions. I was the commander of a tactical team to stop active shooters. In the real world, if you can't get somebody within a couple of football fields of the intended target or the intended area of defense, you're just a crappy commander in general. And most law enforcement, whatever they call it, snipers or designated marksmen, those happen well inside of 100 yards. There need to be precise shots, but they're not long distance. That long distance shooting, it's because people want to feel good, by and large. And you can get mad at that, and you can be like, well, snipers, yes. And I don't pretend to have ever been a sniper in the military. That wasn't my thing. I was an assaultman, infantry, not a sniper. But I worked with snipers. I had them attached to us. I don't think I ever saw them actually used in real life. And here's the thing, and I know some were. I know that some were. But the Marine Corps saw them used so rarely, they got rid of them. The Marine Corps got rid of the MOS of sniper. They just got rid of it because obviously they weren't being used very much. And even, I know the Army still has them, but here's the thing. How many people are in the United States Army? How many personnel are in the United States Army? Then how many of those are combat troops? Then how many of those combat troops are snipers? It's a fraction of a tiny percentage of the population, a tiny decimal point of a fraction of the population. So if you think you're going to be a sniper, okay, well, where is your fire team? Where is your insertion and extraction team? Where is your logistics team getting you food and water and ammo and all that stuff, right? That's not what you're doing. So you're doing it again. It's cool if you want to do it. And if you want to shoot the long range and have the fidget spinners for men and all the electronics and spend all the money and shoot steel at long distance, that's great. It's like playing golf, and that's fine. But don't pretend it's practical. That's my issue. And a lot of, I think, the industry is geared towards, because we can do this thing now and because we can do it affordably, mostly because electronics have become so affordable. And most of that shooting, it used to be a lot of math and a lot of dope getting data obtained by previous engagements. It meant a lot of shooting if you wanted to shoot long distance consistently. Now a lot of that is done by a computer that you can just buy that's fairly affordable. And I think because men can do it now fairly affordably, I mean, still several $1,000s, but fairly affordably, that people think that somehow it's important or practical. And I just want to say that's not the case. Again, if you want to do it, that's cool, but it's for fun. I don't even consider it practical for hunting. And I know people think that it is, and I know especially they bamboozle you Easterners, you East Coast carpetbaggers that come out here and want to hunt because you think that everything out here is long range. One, I'm going to make the argument that I don't think that it's ethical because you can't cheat math. Time of flight is a thing. Time is a thing, right? So when you get out with almost any common cartridge out to, and it depends on the cartridge, but 450 to 500 yards, your time of flight is significant, meaning the time from which you pull the trigger to the time that it hits the animal, that's significant. And even if you can, and the biggest thing on those distances is the wind, even if you read the wind perfectly, and nobody does, but even if you did, if you took that out of the equation, like I read the wind perfectly, I can judge the wind every 10 yards from me to the target, because it doesn't just matter what the wind is where you are, it matters what the wind is where the target is, and in between, if you're shooting like across a canyon or something. Even if you read all that perfectly, if you could see it like somebody dumped a airplane full of chalk between you and the target, and you could read every puff of wind, you could do that. And you had a .0001 MOA gun, meaning effectively it shot exactly where you were aiming, which that gun doesn't exist. But let's say you had that gun, and you had it on a rock-solid rest. You took yourself completely out of the equation, and you had a robot pulling the trigger for you. So you put no mechanical input to pull that shot off. So it was going to hit exactly where you were aiming. All this is ridiculous, but let's just assume all this was taken for granted. And you had that, and you were shooting, let's say, a mule deer or an elk at 500 yards. Well, they're browsers, right? They eat a big chunk of the day that they're awake. They move regularly, right? So unless they're bedded down, unless you're going to build this whole setup for just sleeping animals, right? When you pull that trigger, there's a pretty good chance the animal's going to move just in the natural course of its day from the time you pull the trigger to the time it gets there. How far can you move in a second or a second and a half? I'm walking around while I'm recording this. Like I can move just on the course of like a general gait, just a general walk, ambulatory. I'm going to be out of the path of that bullet in any meaningful kill area of my anatomy in a second. That elk and that deer are the same way. Even if you could do everything perfect on that shot and you could read the wind perfectly and all your dope was good and you were going to put that bullet exactly where you were aiming, well, that animal's likely not going to be where you were aiming in a second and a half. I don't think that that's ethical or practical. So, yeah, can you do it? Can you just lob rounds at an elk at 800 yards and hope that you hit it? You can. And I can't believe that's not against the law with all the other stupid stuff that's against the law. Like you have to have 3 rounds in your shotgun because 5 rounds is a weapon of mass destruction. But it is legal. So, and there's no commandment on it. It's not a shall. If you want to lob rounds at an elk at 800 yards, that's on you. If you think that's ethical and you think that's practical, you go have fun with that, I guess. I don't plan on doing it. But to think that you need to do that to be a successful Western hunter, you just don't. And the people that actually do it regularly know that's true. Now, people that live out here do some of the long-range shooting, especially the guys that just want to spend a bunch of money on a cool kit and say that they did it. I think, again, a lot of that is a hat trick. Oh, I shot my elk at whatever distance. But most other hunters don't even care what distance it was. They want meat for the freezer. Like, I want elk tenderloin for me and my wife to eat. All the years I've hunted out west and guided, I think I've taken one animal pat, if you don't count like prairie dogs, where I was just doing it for fun. But I've taken one big game animal, I think, past 300 yards in all the years, and all the game, and all the guiding, and all the exotic game. It's just, you don't have to do that. If you shoot the elk at 800 yards, you have to walk up and get it anyway. Why don't you just walk up first and shoot it closer? You're telling me you're such a bad hunter, you're so bad at woodscraft, at woodsmanship, that you can't walk within 3 football fields of your game? 3 football fields? If you can't be quiet enough and read the wind well enough to mask your scent, because they generally don't even see you that far away, right? It doesn't even matter what camo you have. You're 3 football fields away. You're telling me you can't walk within 3 football fields of your game? Again, you probably can, you just don't want to. You just want to do it to say that you did it, but come on. Again, that's my opinion on that. That's a big hunting thing. But going back to practical, what's more important is your practical accuracy with the rifle. Especially if you want to hunt, you want to spend the money on a giant gun and a giant tripod and some apparatus to clamp it into and a bunch of fancy attachments and a fidget spinner for men and a scope that you have to dial and turn and click and snap and all the things. There are guys that just like that stuff. And if that's you, have fun with it. But you could just have yourself and a rifle and get good at practical accuracy and enjoy the stalk, enjoy the tracking, enjoy the actual hunting. And shooting, practical accuracy, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. Now, I was hoping to start soon again the next season of CMP, high-power service rifle matches. I'm working, this is not a complaint, but I'm working 6 days a week right now. This secondary private security contracting job was supposed to be part-time. That's why I took it. It went to full-time, and it's went to overtime, like mandatory overtime, 6 days a week. Because if you haven't noticed, the world's kind of crazy right now. So I'm not complaining. Like, we're at war. I'll do my part to serve the country, whatever capacity I am. But anyway, I was hoping to do CMP, which is standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. People have been doing that for a long time, right? That's a standard service rifle. They're not even very accurate. Shooting targets out to, 600 yards with just traditional methods. Shooting a fairly small target, standing offhand, which means standing unsupported. Even without a sling, they don't even allow a sling on the standing position. Just standing with a rifle, hitting fairly small targets at 200 yards consistently. Like, to be decent at it, you're shooting like 90 percentile, like tiny scoring rings. Just standing with a rifle. You can do it. Like, you don't need any crazy thing to do that. You can shoot that, or in the Marine Corps, we shot it at 500 meters, which is 550 yards, with an old beat-up, ragged, just horribly bad rifle, M16A2 that rattled like a spray paint can, with a horrible trigger, with just a sling. At 600, almost 600 yards, 550 yards. 500 meters is about 550 yards. With just a ragged, horrible rifle with a sling. And we can get hits in the wind at a man-sized target with that crappy rifle and a sling at 550 yards. Then you can too. Like, it's stop making everything about the mechanical accuracy of the rifle and make it about the practical accuracy of the rifleman, of you, the man that wields the rifle. That's impressive to me, the test of the man, not the test of the steel, not the test of the barrel, not the test of the BC of the bullet, the test of you as a man and your rifle. How good are you as a system? Part of the rifleman's creed, it's the hits that count. Right? I will fire my rifle true. So there are other aspects that are important besides just the mechanical accuracy of the rifle. And those are things like balance. Those are things like controlled round feed on a rifle, if that's important to you. Those are things like how well does it point, like point shooting, like how can I go from a decent ready position to getting a shot on target quickly because it points well for me. Almost nobody cares about that because they want some giant adjustable stock with some giant high scope that's obese, that, a 34 millimeter tube that wobbles all over when you try and shoot it offhand. They don't care about how it slings up. They care about how can I attach a giant abomination of a bipod or even a tripod to this gun so that I don't actually even have to hold it. I can just lay it there. And I can shoot this fat, obese gun with a light trigger, and I'm basically not even touching it or interacting with it. I'm just pulling a really light trigger with a heavy gun. So even if I don't really have good fundamentals, I can get good hits at distance. That's what's important to people nowadays. Is that what should be important? How about how well can you grab that gun, stand up like a man on your feet, and get hits on target quickly. That's a lot more practical. That's a lot more important. So focus on the rifle for being a rifleman. And again, we owe a lot to things that are actually practical that come out of that. Rifles, by and large, have become more accurate. And I think we owe some of that to bench rest shooting and some of that to the other stuff. But think about being a rifleman. How well do you wield that rifle? And not everything's about how tiny a group you can shoot off a bench. Yeah, what is it? The N.R.A. hunter, I think their weight limit is like 18 pounds. Yeah, sure, you can throw an 18-pound rifle on a ladder and shoot well with it with a light trigger. But are you walking around the woods humping an 18-pound rifle and then shooting it offhand at an elk when you have a fraction of a second to get it in a clearing? No, it has hunting in the name, but that's not hunt. Like that's not how I hunt. Let's put it that way. You're going to hunt with an 18-pound rifle? Like, who does that? Yeah, maybe it shoots a quarter MOA, but wouldn't you rather have a rifle that you can carry all day, that balances well, that you can throw up in your shoulder and shoot accurately from the standing, sitting, kneeling, prone that weighs 6-7 pounds? Isn't that a lot more practical? Hunting, even though they put hunter in the name of an N.R.A. hunter, you do what you want. But to me, that makes a lot more sense, and that's a better test of a man as a rifleman. And again, it's not a shall, right? If you want to go spend a bunch of money on all that stuff, it's your money. As long as you earned it justly, have fun with it, do what you want with it. Just, to me, it's a hobby. It's a hat trick. It's a fun parlor thing. It's not really practical. If you want to spend your money on it and pretend that it's somehow going to be useful to you in the real world someday, have fun with it. Or otherwise, just know that it's a fun hobby to have. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are interested in being a rifleman, look at shooting like a real rifleman. Standing, sitting, kneeling, prone, hasty sling. If you are going to use a rest, something practical like throwing your pack down and getting on it quickly and using it as a rest. If you're running like an AR or something similar, don't just go and, blast a giant silhouette target at 25 yards at the indoor range and be like, oh, I'm so good. Actually try and shoot challenging distances, standing, sitting, kneeling, prone. Shooting something like the Marine Corps qual is a bit hard to do for the average rifleman. It takes a pretty specialized range, but there are Army alternate quals you can shoot with those guns at moderate ranges and see how well you do there. Try out CMP. Try out service rifle type competitions. See if there's, a local 2-gun match in your area. Some of those are more practical than others. Some of those are just basically people trying to act like John Wick, which is also not practical. But I'm not super familiar with John Wick, but you're not going to end up in a 2.5-hour running gun battle. But a lot of those are more practical than others. But look for a good 2-gun match. Those are going to have you shoot in practical and sometimes awkward positions, which happens in real life. So think about being a rifleman, not just a dude with a rifle. That's my thoughts on the matter. Your tactical tip of the day, the lost art of shooting with a sling. There are a couple of different ways and methods for this. Audio is not the best for this, but you can look up. I can tell you what to look up and see photos of this. But look up shooting with the old military sling. Look up shooting with a hasty sling, which is just a general 2-point setup. But also like a military loop sling around your bicep, tricep. Look at learning how to do that. Look at using something like a more modern Magpul sling, but in a hasty or loop sling type setup. Look at a Rhodesian sling. Look at a Ching sling. Look at, again, the lost art of using a sling, which is practical anyway because your rifle should probably have a sling, but helping that make you shoot more accurately. So look up some sling techniques and try some sling techniques. Try it in dry fire. Get used to it so you can use it in the real world. I think that's kind of a dying art. Everybody thinks they need a bipod or a tripod. You don't want to know not a secret, but I don't even own a bipod. Of all the rifles I have, I own 0 bipods or tripods or anything like that. I have like a rubber rest that I'll use when I'm trying to determine loads for my rifle. It's practical for determining what load my rifle likes to get me more out of the equation. But as far as practical shooting goes, no. Shoot it with you and your body. Anyway, look up the sling techniques. That's your tactical tip of the day. How about your tactical verse of the day? This is going to be 1 Peter 5. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Yes, sometimes we find ourselves in physical altercations, but we are born into a spiritual battle of good and evil. Be vigilant for that. You will face no adversary more ferocious than the devil and sin. So you best be on guard for that. You had best be armed for that and prepared for that. That is your primary battle. And the most important battle, because you can win 100 gunfights and you die and go to hell, you kind of lost, right? You missed the point. So be alert, be sober, be vigilant. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion. Thanks for listening and have a blessed day.